With the amount of time costumers spend talking about pockets, you'd think we were utterly obsessed with them. We kind of are. I don't know about you, but if I was an outsider looking in on Costube, I'd think this pocket obsession was just a little sus. If we're not tucking pockets into garments that didn't originally include them, we're just making standalone 18th century pockets and strapping them around our waists. That's the kind of pocket I'm making today. This is actually a kind of trial run. I have plans to make another pocket again in the near future. What I'm doing today is knocking the bugs out of my process so I feel a little more comfortable with the other pocket on my mental checklist. Now, for those of you who somehow missed all the other pocket videos on YouTube, and there's enough of them that I haven't watched them all, here's the quick and dirty. Nowadays we sew our pockets directly into our garments, but that seems to be a side effect of the current fashion of wearing the least amount of layers possible. We complain a lot that women's pockets are teeny in comparison to men's, but let's get real for a moment, okay? I make no secret of the fact that I have a personal vendetta against the whole skinny jean thing. And not only is it because they cling to all the wrong places on my body, but the pockets are non-existent. They're that way for a reason. The word skinny implies that you don't want any extra fabric bulk, so they just get rid of it. Particularly any extra bulk around your tummy or waistline. And there's a lot I could unpack about that concept, but let's just save that for a rainy day, shall we? That seems to be the logic for a lot of other pocket trends. Is putting a quickly constructed pocket going to possibly throw off the intended fit or line of the garment? Well, make it smaller or leave it out. No word of a lie, I have jackets that came with the pockets sewn shut. There were actual pockets, but the entry to the pocket was deliberately obscured. Probably because they didn't want you doing something logical like stick the great mound of metal that is the various items on your keyring into said pocket and thus skew the drape of the coat. Indeed, Mr. Bowie. Indeed. Fast fashion production doesn't really have the time to insert a structurally stable pocket of size. They just know you want clean, smooth lines, so they're trying to deliver on that. I know, it sounds like a kind of victim blaming, right?
This is why we can't have nice things, Barry!
Women's fashion, historically speaking, was layers upon layers of fabric. Just the undergarments I've made so far for my Edwardian project is more fabric than most women wear in a day. Layer a petticoat, a skirt, and a blouse. It's a lot. If we go back to the 18th century where this pocket is usually traced to, we have voluminous skirts, sometimes with multiple petticoats, sometimes with the structural assistance of panniers or other devices. Much of that was tied or attached in such a way that the stays took the brunt of the weight. Totes and coach bags just weren't exactly the thing back then, so they took their advantage of the room beneath the structural layers and just hung one more item off those stays. Because the skirts tied at the sides rather than the front or back like we do today, you could attach your pocket at the side and easily slip your hand between the layers of fabric. Need a place to put your keys now that hanging them on a decorative chain around your waist is no longer a thing? It's not a problem anymore. I'm not entirely convinced that the 18th century pocket isn't somehow related to the modern tool belt. It just seems like some tradesman somewhere was looking at his wife's pockets back in the 1700s and thought to himself, I bet that thing could hold a hammer. He's probably not wrong. I wanted to make project bags for myself and some family members a couple of Yules ago and never got around to it. I made an attempt at one semi-bucket bag, I think, and had trouble with the zippers, so I put it aside and never got back around to it. I mention that because I think an 18th century pocket might make a good substitute. I have a couple of box bags. These are my two oldest and most used. They're both lined, and they both have zippered openings and a handle you can use for dangling over your wrist if you're crafting on the move. That's great, but most of the time I wind up tucking all of my notions in the bag with the ball of yarn. If I take the yarn out, then my other stuff likes to come with it. If I leave the yarn in the bag and I need to get to my embroidery scissors or tube full of crafting needles, have to dig around the yarn. Add to that, dangling this thing off my wrist is, well, it's not ergonomic and I'm not all that coordinated. So I figure the pocket might be an interesting experiment. Can I make a couple of internal pockets or pouches to hold my most used supplies like stitch markers, scissors, tape measure, tapestry, and cable needles, and have enough room on the main compartment for the project in progress? If that works, this might be a nice solution for my sibling-in-law who likes to tat, because I'm pretty sure they have a few shuttles and possibly some tatting needles and hooks to wrangle along with those wee balls of crochet cotton. Alrighty, time to check the stash. I'd love to say that I started collecting and hoarding printed cotton fabric when mask making was the thing to do, but the truth is, I'm just a sucker for fabric with flamingos and Yoda and stuff. Some of this was bought with the intention of making project bags, as I mentioned before. I think I picked up a couple of funky prints when Michaels opened their fabric section because I figured it would look cool on a corset. Some came from Mum's cotton stash, and some was meant for masks and other sundry small projects. I say small projects because when you're my size and you don't have kids, unless you're dialed into finding clothing patterns online, you're probably only going to pick this stuff up in 1/4 to 1 meter lengths for small projects. That said, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a nice stash buster project for those large, irregularly shaped bits of leftover fabric. And sometimes your stash just needs unicorns and rainbows. And llamas. So I think I'll dip into that stash of 1 meter or less lengths. I've been planning this project for a while, actually, to the point where I made a pattern. The Victoria and Albert Museum in Britain has a pattern you can download with instructions for printing. It's based on an extant example, so they've included the outline of the pocket's embroidery so you can make your very own highly embroidered and embellished pocket. If that's what you're looking for, I definitely recommend you go there and download it. I just wanted the dimension and scale, so I rolled that information into a vector illustration program and tweaked it for symmetry and other features. I'm a nerd. I specified the front opening slot and put in an indication line so you can include internal pouches or pockets. Before anyone asks, no, I have not watched the utility pocket videos. This is because I want to fumble my way through this on my own and not knowingly copy their process entirely. I'll check that series of videos out later after I've finished tweaking this pattern for my patrons, because my $10 bougie pattern weight tier on Patreon includes patterns when available, and I'd really like to give my patrons something nice. Let's see if this thing works. Just a very quick voiceover here. I had daily vlogs about my process, but with the forest fires just west of us, my voice went super squeaky, super fast, so you get the abbreviated version. Day 2 was dedicated to the cutting out of stuff. After that, I turned under the top edges of the inner pouch pockets and ironed them down. This is so we're prepared for making those inner pockets. I went with a tasteful pink and gray print and matching gray solid for the outside of one pocket. Lemons for the inside. The other pocket has llamas. I rather like llamas. Mum and I bought this fabric and split it between the two of us. We wondered what to do with this print, and it looks like we're going down similar yet entirely separate ways with our individual projects. If she ever finishes hers, I'll see if I can snag some pictures. The interior of this pocket has unicorns and rainbows. That's the beauty of a pocket. You can be all business on the outside and rainbows and unicorns on the inside. Nobody needs to know. I'm certainly not going to tell. If you feel like sharing, let me know what your fabric choices are or would be in the comments. While you're at it, boop the like button. I like the validation. Amazingly enough, my voice deteriorated even more. Remember Alvin and the Chipmunks? Pretend they're talking about sewing. That was me. Today I broke out the sewing machine and started with the easiest bit, sewing down the opening for those inner pockets. Then I pinned them in place on the lining. I used an ancient chalk pastel purloined from my paternal parent to mark the width and depth of the pouches, and then stitched. The nice thing about this is the contents of the pocket will be contained mainly by the inner lining and none of the stitching will show on the outside. I also made a bobbin pocket with the leftover lemon fabric. I'm using salvaged and leftover bias tape on the llama pocket and making strips from a leftover section of the gray material for the other. I cut the front opening on my pattern and traced it onto my front pieces in chalk. I stitched the top half of the pocket just inside this line before cutting, just to stabilize the area. Okay, day 4, I think. The days are all kind of melding together now. And I'm kind of looking forward to seeing the end of the pockets. They're great, don't get me wrong, but this is taking a lot longer than I thought it would. I'm pretty sure that I could have these done in a day if I really wanted to, but I decided to do 2 at once. So, game plan. First I'm going to bind off the opening with bias tape. And I think I might have to do part of that by hand because it's going to be a matter of getting around the curve. After that, we're just going to sandwich everything together and bind off the edges, probably using the machine because it'll be nice and quick. I'm also thinking of putting a loop on the back so that when the pocket's not in use, it can be hung up on the wall and used as a nice little place to store things. Because the husbeast would argue that command strips are part of my aesthetic. That makes 2 pockets done, one of which will be leaving my house for, well, parts known to me at least. I know this reveal is short, but this isn't going to be the last you see of this pocket. Oh no, I have plans.